Kia ora. Welcome to this Kiwi Deaf Diversity Series. We have a special part 2 today with some very special guests, and thank you for staying on to carry on the interview. There's really a lot of rich and valuable information being shared here. If you haven't yet watched part 1, please go ahead and watch it. Get an understanding before you watch this one. So, I think there's a lot more unpacking to do with regards to the NZSL Act. It's been 20 years now, so since that massive achievement. But I still have some thoughts about the bill and some questions when it comes to the first, second and third readings and how that all worked. Are you able to elaborate? So we first had to lobby the MPs to get their support for New Zealand Sign Language becoming an official language. That was a first step. And so we achieved that. So the MP who took this on was Ruth Dyson. And that was through a private member's bill. So we had our name in the mix, and it was like a ballot situation when we were picked out. That was the one regarding the New Zealand Sign Language becoming an official language was chosen. So luckily it was chosen out of the pot. Yeah, I think that had been in there for quite a long time, waiting before it was finally drawn. I'm not quite sure how many years it was kind of waiting there in the mix, but finally our name got drawn, and that was the first reading before Parliament. And all of the parties agreed to, at that first reading to move forward. After the first reading, there was the establishment of a select committee. So Wellington, Christchurch and Auckland, MPs would visit those places and listen to the deaf community giving their submissions. So mostly they were great, except for one that wasn't so great. But in general, that went well. So for the second reading, there were a few amendments suggested, and for the third reading all of the MPs voted and decided that we would move forward and it would become an act officially. All except for one party voted in favour, and ACT was the party that wasn't supportive, but the rest of the parties were in support. Wow. So you said amendments were made at that second reading stage. So why is that? So was that words adapted from the first reading? Yes, so from the first reading, people kind of made their submissions after that and just kind of said what they thought needed to be amended, changed, and then the MPs, the select committee, they, made the decisions about whether to accept those recommendations or not to accept them. And so, those amendments came in terms of word amendments. So deaf people were involved in that group, were they? No, they weren't. That was just MPs, but the submissions were made by people. It could be oral or video submissions or written submissions. So they were presented there at a forum, and so if they felt that the words weren't strong enough, for example, they would put that in that they needed to be changed. So it was about following that, and then those amendments were made. That's Parliament speak, I call it. Parliament speak. So that suited them. So that was the second reading, and then the third reading was coming together and to have that all passed, and it had to be signed by the governor. So the governor signed it off, and then at that stage we were official. I went to the select committee to listen to the submissions and to support other deaf people who were making submissions. And there was one person who made a really powerful submission, and he, at that time, had barriers when it came to the police and courts, and it was heartbreaking, really. And his statement was really impactful for the MPs, specifically in terms of the justice space. And so we really have a lot of gratitude for him sharing his story. Yeah. And, they really wanted to see that evidence, didn't they, about why NZSL needed to become an official language, and that evidenced it. So, instead of things being vague, that was just concrete. Yeah. So, for example, from my story, I shared my story and of being on jury and how that impacted me. Before we had NZSL became an official language, and in terms of those requirements for the courtroom, but me being a citizen and losing that right to serve as a juror, and that loss of confidence you felt when you were told to please step down, right? You couldn't be involved, and you felt disempowered through that experience. Yeah. And it's still happening today. There are some deaf people who have to step down, not because of that, but because there's not a proper system for interpreters, and that's what fails them. There are still barriers there. Yeah, so government, made the decision about that agency being contracted to provide interpreters in the court space, but only them. But there weren't enough interpreters through that agency. There was another agency that had plenty of interpreters, but they weren't able to be used. So the choice was limited. Yeah, so our rights were being decided on by agencies, not by us. So that needed to be cleaned up. Yeah, fixed up. And that relates to the part, like, what suggestions the deaf people who are watching made, and what would you like to say about those barriers and the choice, and, people needing access to different agencies because that is their right to access them. And, just thinking about 20 years later, like from this time forward, what do you suggest the deaf community can do? I think that the deaf community needs to be very, very aware that government can change the rules at any time and, change attitudes. Deaf people need to keep advocating to make sure that there is wider access to different things. If you step back, hearing people will take over your life. So, when you go to the doctor as an adult, they might tell you that you need an operation. And you might get that information. You want to get that information yourself. You don't want to get it from mum or dad. You want to access that information yourself as the deaf patient, and to be able to make the decision to go ahead with surgery or not to go ahead, as the case may be. So my decision was not based on what mum or dad said. It was like I needed access to an interpreter. And so we need to have advocacy in that space. There are some political parties that don't believe that this should all be kind of mixed, like all of us together. So deaf, hearing, crippled, blind, they don't believe believe it should be separate, and it's all based on money. But what we need to do is be very strong, and the young people today need to really roll up their sleeves and advocate in that space, just to keep things going. Yeah, keep going and not to give up. Kim? Yes, each deaf person has a duty and a responsibility as guardians of the language. Yeah, absolutely. To stand up, to be empowered, to speak up, and to say, I need access. Simple as that. I need access to this, work, health, court, family, education, all of it. We need to stand up, be assertive, and speak up. Because, following on from what Jennifer said, it's easy to step back and let somebody else kind of take over. For example, referring to a disability group. But we need to have, that's not enough. First of all, we need access to the language before we can go and get involved in disability groups. And if we don't have language access, then how are we going to actually assist or move forward in that area? We can't. So it all comes back to the language and the responsibility and commitment over that. It's critical. Any time, there's any official language adjustments. For example, recently there was one about English being made an official language. That's a long story. That's a discussion for another day. But really, it's critical that deaf people make sure that New Zealand Sign Language is at the fore. That's our right. This is our language. This is our life, our lives, and we need to be proud of this. Your hands, your eyes, all of it. It's all worth it. And we need to keep advocating. Please keep advocating. That's a really great suggestion for the deaf community and for deaf children looking, and hopefully be able to just remember that as they grow older, from your statements and your words, being able to really take that to heart and advocate. Same, over the years as has been happening, that advocacy, and, it hasn't stopped. We're still going. Advocate. Yeah. And we have to, think about, say, for example, the introduction of AI. We can't allow them to take over our language or that to take over our language. We're the guardians. We're the owners. Yes, that's right. That's really important. It's precious that we keep our language and, that responsibility, as you say, to be guardians and to protect it. And, even from overseas influences as well, that can have an impact on our language. Those influences from overseas, we need to think about New Zealand as our own native language, NZSL. Yeah, and it's a very exciting language. It's a very living language. And it's so, I was so thrilled and so happy when the bill was passed back in 2006. And I don't want to lose that, I don't want to step back. I want us to keep going. And now, young people, it's your turn to take up the baton. That's right. I guess it's really about, when that bill was passed, and it's like when they first said, we are official. How did you feel at that stage? I was overjoyed. I was so happy. We banged our feet, we waved our hands, and really, I cried because it had been such a long time coming. It had been a long battle, a lot of battling, and finally to achieve this, it's giving me goosebumps now. Yeah, it was a really worthwhile celebration, and we need to look after this, and we need to keep it and protect it and keep advocating for it. Wow, what about yourself, Kim? Yeah, same. I was so excited when it was passed as well. All of the work that had led up to it, but we haven't yet finished. It's only a beginning, and it's only going to grow from here. Yes, we finally got that status of, official language, but that was the first step. There are many more to come. Wow. I remember I was there at the first reading of the bill, and I was, I think, 17 when I was there. And so I watched. I remember both of you were there too at that time. Wow. Really, really precious history. Thank you so much for your valuable contribution and your hard work and your advocacy, your stories and your lived experiences. You've got such strong kind of connections and that empathy and, knowing what's best for deaf people and thinking what's best for the language. Like you say, it's critical. It's, we need to keep it going. It's a living language. And yeah, and also, I feel like it's not just us either. There were so many other deaf people who were involved. So many, all over New Zealand. A lot of deaf people, fought for that, for this. So, if it wouldn't have worked if it were just Kim and I. There were so many others. That's right. In total agreement with you. And wonderful people we have out there. I agree. There are wonderful people working in the background, everyone working together. I know that some people have gone, and we honour those people, and we honour those who are still living now as well. So that's why we're here, to celebrate NZSL and, its official status. So thank you so much. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching, and it's given you a bit of insight into the history of our language and the process, how government works. And so happy New Zealand Sign Language Week to all of you.